You're listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast with Jody Livingston and Chris Trent. Episode number 51.
Middle school.
Welcome to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast, helping you survive and thrive in youth ministry. And now, your hosts, Jody Livingston and Chris Trent.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to the show today. Thanks for tuning in and listening wherever you are and wherever this finds you. Thanks for making this podcast today a part of your day. You can find me on the Twitter sphere at Jody Livingston and the Chris Trent.
Hey, the new guy.
The new guy at
Chris Trent.
All together.
Yeah.
And of course, over on the Facebook at The Longer Haul. All of the links and resources mentioned in this episode, you can find on the show notes page at thelongerhaul.com/episode 051. That's thelongerhaul.com/episode 051. Fun stuff. This is the first one official. Well, I guess last maybe was the official, but first one together, not giving an intro.
Yes. Yeah,
and
totally.
We're going to talk about middle school ministry today.
Yeah.
Because you're a middle school pastor?
That's what I do.
And because we talked about way back in episode 36 that we would bring you, I would have you back on the show one day to talk about middle school ministry.
Deal. The only way I was going to be willing to partner with you is if we could talk middle school at least one time.
So we're getting it out of the way. We're going to do it off the front and get it out of the way. So I'm excited about this because I think this is a topic that isn't often addressed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you know, it's what I do. I really do. I love middle school students a lot.
Which is helpful.
Yeah. And I know not everybody listening necessarily does. Some people tolerate. Here's my question before we jump in too heavy on this thing, Jody. Okay. I know everybody listening is dying to know, what type of middle school kid were you?
Oh, man. I was the asthmatic.
Were you?
Yeah.
I shouldn't be laughing at that. I'm going to get an email.
No, my first camp experience was just prior to middle school. My mom sent me to asthma camp.
Oh, that's a thing? That's an actual thing?
That's a thing.
Wow. Okay. Cool.
It was horrible. Like, it was in the woods with everything that I was allergic to.
You know what? I can't say what I want. Can I say? The modern day equivalent of that would be gluten-free camp, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, my wife would go to that camp. I know
that's a real thing, so okay, yeah, okay.
My wife would go to that camp. Yeah, so I was in a cabin with a guy who was above me who'd played Dungeons and Dragons, which this is like a long time ago. So yeah. I was terrified. All he talked about was witches and warlocks, and I thought for sure in the middle of the night Satan was going to come drag me away. It was pretty terrible. And I remember this guy with coming in with 2 big 5-gallon buckets with like cow lungs.
You know, you talked about this in episode 001.
Did I?
Because I'm trying to work through all the episodes so I can feel like I'm a real part of this thing. And
so when I got to middle school,
I just
it was terrible. It was terrible. When I got to middle school, I was not an athlete. I just moved. So we moved my 6th grade year. So I didn't know anybody. I had no friends. I was not athletic. And, I just had asthma attacks all the time.
Yeah.
So.
Sounds like middle school.
It was terrible.
Yeah, middle school is terrible.
It was absolutely terrible.
It can be hard.
But I survived it.
Yeah.
And high school was a little better.
But you're glad it's all behind you.
But I'm glad I'm out. I made it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
I feel like all of a sudden I'm going to be like Debbie Downer here all of a sudden. But, my parents divorced when I was in middle school. So obviously that played a huge part of who I was. But for me, I was the kid trying to be popular. I was the kid, like, if a girl complimented me, like on a shirt, like I would.
You're going to wear that shirt every day.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like I've got a picture of me in this white sweatshirt, short sleeve sweatshirt.
Of course.
What happened to those? Bring them back.
Let's not. Let's never.
But yeah, I mean, that was me. I've got a middle school picture of me wearing an Indiana Jones hat because I'm a kid of the 80s, right? And with a white sweatshirt on with 2 button 80s again, with buttons on. One that said "I love rock and roll" and the other one said "Chicago."
Nice.
But it was all about me just trying to feel accepted, man. So yeah, middle school. Woo-hoo.
Like on the scope of Saved by the Bell, which I know wasn't 80s, I was closer to the Screech side.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Than to I didn't have the hair.
Yeah.
That's never been a thing for me.
I think I wanted to be the Zach, the popular kid, but I never really quite got there. I came close, I think.
I made friends.
Yeah.
I got in one fight.
Yeah.
And that was it. It was a good fight.
Yeah.
But it was worth it.
Yeah, so let's talk about why we love middle school now.
Yeah, it was.
I do get that question a lot, and this might be a way to start this thing. Why middle school, right?
Yeah,
and that is a question.
You don't have to.
No, believe it or not, I have other options and I have other talents.
Yeah,
don't say it. You're about to say it. I know what you're about to say.
Magic trick.
You said you whispered it, but they can still hear you. Why middle school? Honestly, because middle school was terrible for me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't completely, it'd be an over exaggeration.
It was traumatic.
All terrible. But middle school's hard, and it's hard for most people that I know.
Yeah.
It's not the best experience for most people. And honestly, that's one of the reasons why I love pouring in to middle school kids.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's definitely a group. And so for me, I was a youth pastor out in Texas full time for a while, like almost 8 years there, where I had 7th through 12th grade, internships and all kinds of youth ministry, other things prior to that, and, different volunteer type or Wednesday night leading worship type things. And I was in a worship band before worship bands were cool. We'll tell you about that in another episode. But when I had the opportunity to come here to Johnson Ferry and just work with middle school students, it was a real win for me. So, because I love pouring in to that age group. So I'd love to spend a few minutes talking about what I love about them, what I don't like about them.
Yeah.
And I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this stuff as well, because you work with middle school students, and most people probably listening have both middle school and high school in their groups, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
And are dealing with both.
Yeah. Well, I think most people are probably, just as you're saying that, I'm thinking like, if youth pastors relate more to high school, maybe it's because God did something pretty amazing in their high school years.
True.
Or their high school years were, versus middle school or vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like for me, I really like upperclassmen.
That's all. Because you can have real conversations with them.
Yeah, we were just talking about that the other day.
Yeah.
But like that's where the Lord really showed up in my life.
Yeah, totally.
Out of an incredibly traumatic thing, God really, everything that my life has become was shaped out of that year, that time in my life. And so I would imagine that, I don't know, I never really considered that before, but I think that's probably.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think for me, though, the reason middle school, some of the biggest successes and biggest failures start with a lot of people in middle school. You look at people, like some of the things they probably love about themselves formed in middle school.
Yeah.
Some things they don't like about themselves, bad habits started in middle school. So there's a lot to that, except in youth ministry, we often give middle school our sort of leftovers there.
Right.
And we don't give them the best, of our efforts. And I understand a lot of that because I work with folks enough to know why that's tempting at times. But that said, I just think it's worth talking about. And honestly, if anything, over the next few minutes, what we maybe talk about, I hope that I could maybe encourage you, if you're listening and you are struggling, if you're just kind of barely getting by with these middle school beings that are in your group, maybe as a result of what we're talking about over the next few minutes, maybe you'll walk away just with a little bit more of a passion for them, and also maybe a couple ideas on how you might could reach them a little better,
Yeah.
So
having a middle schooler in my house has been, now a few middle schoolers in my house.
Yeah, totally.
And
right?
my family have come through that has been really helpful.
Yeah. My kid, my son's a junior now, and my daughter's in 8th grade, so she's about to be done out of our middle school ministry, but I've had that same experience where I've had both of them, and it's changed the way I think about that, as well. So,
okay, so let's talk about, why do you love middle school?
Why do I love middle school? Because here's a few things. Number one, they're not too cool for school. Some high school kids are.
That's true.
Or at least they are with me, and
that's true.
Not all of them are, but they're not too cool for school. And honestly, they tend to appreciate you trying, even if what you're playing fails. Like, so even
Right.
if you do if you do a game on stage and it's terrible, they're not going to necessarily not show up the next week because your game was terrible, but they're going to give you like a second chance. So I love that about them. They tend to have short memory spans when it comes to that stuff. I love their energy. I know that's the part that scares a lot of folks up. We'll come back to that. But just that energy, man, is just huge. Like you think about how much energy they have. Again, can be the scary part, but in some ways it's incredible because they are just bouncing off the wall. And I love the fact that they are experiencing freedoms for the first time.
Right.
We have an opportunity to pour into a kid's life when they're starting to experiment with choices and think about things for the very first time because they're being given choices that they've never been given before, which is incredible. If you think about that opportunity to speak into their lives when they have the freedom to believe what they want to believe, do what they want to do, because their parents are starting to pull back a little bit.
Hopefully.
So, well, yeah, that's a whole other podcast episode. Hopefully, yes, but in most cases,
sure.
and so that's a real. I mean, I love that part. And just one other quick thing, I love the fact that they have more time on their hands.
Yeah.
It's easier sometimes to get a group of middle school students. This is one thing I've loved about doing only middle school ministry over the last 13 years is just their schedules are not quite as busy. They don't have cars. So on the one hand, you're sort of reliant on their parents to get them from point A to point B, but once you get them, you've got them, and that's a real win. But of course,
No, I think that's good, and even as things seem to be getting busier and busier and busier, I do find that our middle schoolers are easier to get.
Sure.
They seem to be a little less complicated.
Yeah. And of course, it depends on where you live and what your community's like. And, I understand that. But generally speaking, they don't have jobs yet and they just can't go when they want to go. So,
yeah, no, I agree. Okay. So those are the things you love. What are some of the challenges?
Energy.
But I thought that's what you loved.
Energy. Yeah. I mean, I get, man, the bouncing off the wall energy is the part that's terrifying at times too, man. You walk in the room, it's like, oh my gosh. And I'm not gonna lie, man, there are nights, Wednesday nights, Sunday mornings, where I go, I just don't know if I've got this in me right now, but I try to thrive off of that and try to build off of that. But I think the key is to embrace it. But man, it can be a real challenge. And sometimes it is hard to get them to shut up. It just is, and I get that part. Sometimes it's hard to get a 7th grade guy to think about anything.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge. Part of that is one of the other challenges though. It's puberty.
Right.
They literally are going through changes and their brains are and their bodies are just freaking out right now. And so as a result of that impacts all that. All their chemicals are all out of whack. And, half the time you've got some kids maybe that are on some type of meds that are showing up on Wednesday night, but their meds are wearing off by then.
Or on Sunday, where the parents are
where
like,
the parents give them a break.
Yeah, they say, we're not going to give you the meds for the weekend.
Yeah, right. And but you know what? I just try to remember, man. Like I try to remember and just embrace that, and understand again. See that as an opportunity.
Yeah.
To love them in spite of that and speak into their life in spite of that.
Yeah.
With the hopes that there'll be one day later on down the road where they go, man, there was at least some people who loved me in spite of me being ridiculous. Because I think most of them, not all, but most of them will look back and go, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It was terrible.
Or, it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, challenge, they won't be quiet. I've said that kind of already, but they really won't, at times there's just such a challenge. It's such a challenge to get them to be quiet. And I think along with that has come this sounds like a dad moment right here for sure. But something's changed, I feel like, with teenagers where there's not as much respect for adults.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And
I think that goes for our culture as a whole.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
We're just seeing it more, especially with middle school. the values and the things that you're hearing and seeing in them are often not necessarily their own yet.
Yeah.
So it seems to be a little more telling of their environment, their culture.
Yeah. So with that, and this would be another challenge, and there's probably a ton more, but one of the challenges I think that is probably the biggest challenge, but also biggest opportunity at the same time, would just be the fact that they're questioning their faith for the first time.
Yeah.
You've got to think, man, these kids, they've grown up in maybe, if they've grown up in a Christian home, and that's an if, but if they have, they believed what mom and dad told them to believe.
Yeah.
And if they're compliant type kids, they especially believe that. And I'm not saying their faith's not legitimate, because it can be. But all of a sudden, for the first time, they're starting to go, man, what do I really believe about Jesus? What do I really think about this? Again, that's real challenging, because they're not the compliant little kids anymore that they were in third grade, But what an opportunity. And I don't think we need to be waiting until ninth grade to tap into that,
No, if you wait, you almost run the risk of being too late. And I think, and I've said this before, and maybe you would disagree with me on this.
I'll let you know.
This will be fun. I think maybe the most important years of a student's life in regards to their faith is 9th or 10th grade. And the reason I say that is because of what you're saying. Like early in, they're questioning a lot. They're beginning to question a lot. On the backside of that, 11th, 12th grade, now they're driving. Now they've got jobs. They're already starting to fill out college stuff. They're already looking ahead. Yeah. And I find if God doesn't really show up in 9th or 10th grade, it's not that he can't or that he doesn't ever. I mean, I'm a product of him showing up later, but it's rare.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's a really good point that you're making, in the sense that if we don't maximize those conversations early, before they get to that 9th or 10th grade year, where maybe now developmentally they're really beginning to think abstractly, I think, and I think sometimes we push that down the road, too late maybe, and then we're reacting rather than kind of preparing. But I definitely see that.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, I think maybe what I could do, just spend a few minutes, Jody, if it's okay. I'd love to just talk about maybe just some tips, I guess.
Yeah.
On what to do, with the middle. Because here's the thing. Probably everyone listening, there might be some high school pastors listening, but most everybody probably has middle school kids in their group. So what do we do with those? What do we do with them? I'd like to say this, start here. Start here. And number one is just believe what God believes about them. And if you look at Scripture, I love the fact that the Bible is full of these amazing stories where God literally used like middle school age kids to do life-changing, really world-changing type things through, So you look at Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were very young. You look at Mary, probably middle school age, whenever she was informed she was going to be Mary, mother of Jesus.
No pressure.
No pressure there. I love that part where they forget him, by the way.
Yeah.
That's awesome. He's a middle school kid, by the way.
Yeah.
And it's kind of interesting. We get Jesus as a baby. We get grown-up Jesus. And then we get just a brief moment there of middle school Jesus, which is kind of cool. So all these, though, incredible stories. And there's lots more we could literally, David was anointed king as a middle school age kid. And most likely, that's what we think his age was. So I think that says something about what God thinks. God doesn't write them off. Now, the world writes them off.
Yeah.
People write them off. They're in middle school. Even their name, middle.
Right. They're the middle child.
They're middle. They're right in the middle. Right. So they're probably middle children going, no. So, but yeah, I think start there. Just believe what, believe what God believes about them. But then I would say this, if you're responsible for leading a team of volunteers, so if you're a youth pastor listening and you're responsible for leading a group of maybe youth workers that are teaching them on Sunday mornings or helping lead them on Wednesday nights, just make sure that the workers are prepared. And this might mean that you don't give them the least of your youth workers.
Right.
Not that some workers are least, but they are. And I mean, but often what we do is we say, man, this is like my A player youth worker. He's been doing this. She's been doing this forever. Well, Jody, where are we going to put that worker typically? With the seniors.
Right.
I happen to put them with the seniors. You know what I'm saying? Let's put them with 7th graders. If they're really amazing, let's put them where the kids are, building that strong foundation. So I'd say start by taking your youth workers and making sure they're prepared, and also making sure that you're not just putting them in there just to help keep the kids quiet on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights or keep them out of trouble, but make sure that they're actually prepared to take them deeper, because that part's going to be huge. You've got to set yourself up for success in that moment. And if you just put a babysitter in there, they're just going to babysit.
So how do you, because we talk a lot about building teams, volunteer teams, how do you convince somebody to work with middle school?
Yeah. You bribe them with money.
And candy? No, you give the kids the candy. Right.
So let's see here. So I would say, how do you...
Like, let's say you've got somebody that you think would be great to work with your middle school kids.
Yes.
What's your pitch?
Yeah. I think it has to start with the fact that I genuinely like and love and respect and value them. And I know that sounds like what I'm supposed to say. And obviously I'm doing this by choice only, middle school now. But I think it has to start with that. Like, you have to be able to create. You have to believe that there can be more accomplished than you just survived this year.
Right.
And then if you start to paint a picture, if you start to cast a vision, there's going to be some adults that buy into that. If you start to help them to understand, look, I know those 7th grade guys are the ones that everybody doesn't want to be around. Nobody wants to be around those guys. Or those middle school kids in general. They're the ones always bouncing off the wall. But if you help them, if you can help people to understand, man, some of the biggest decisions of those kids' lives are happening right now, and you have a chance to influence that. Wow.
Yeah.
Some people, not all, some people will start to catch that vision and go, man, that's, I'd much rather do that than to clean up. Again, I'm very pro high school kids. I love hanging out with high school kids as well.
Liar.
I do. No, I do.
You have one in your home.
Yeah, I have one in my house. But with high school kid, a lot of times you're cleaning up or you're in preventive mode there.
Right. No, yeah, that's true.
And so in middle school, it's like almost a blank canvas there, where you're getting to sort of start from scratch and pour into that. So I think that part's huge.
Well, I love that you're saying recruit on vision, right? Because I think what we do often, and again, I've talked about this before, but so I don't want to rehash it, but too often I think we recruit on need. Sure. I really need somebody to work.
I gotta have.
If we don't have this, then we can't. We're not going to be able to have this middle school thing if we don't have adults. Yeah, and that's bad.
Yeah.
So,
and I would say this, just that we could have a whole. And you probably have done some podcasts on recruitment, but part of the whole recruitment process has to be, number one, it's a year-round process for you. But that you're just constantly kind of thinking through and casting vision for folks. But, but in that, just casting vision, helping them to understand, the importance of it, and just not settling. It's okay to say to some people, you're maybe you're not wired for youth ministry.
Yeah.
But then again, trying to really, for some of your better workers, put them in. And that was when I was going and doing D-Nows as like a D-Now leader, on the weekend. Once I became like a youth pastor, professional youth pastor guy or whatever, they would say, we'll put you with our seniors. And I'd go, how about your 7th grade guys?
Right.
I'd rather pour my life into that than to deal with, So it's just, honestly, just kind of the way I'm wired. So it's kind of part of that. We'll talk about teaching and Bible study for a minute with middle school kids.
Sure.
That can be a real challenge. Number one, I think you just got to make sure that you're preparing well. Not just you as a youth worker, teacher person, like if you're a youth pastor teaching on stage, kind of setting, but making sure your workers are prepared for that as well. And we talked a little bit about that, but just focusing on excellence and remembering that they don't need to just get the leftovers. I do think it's important to understand, though, that due to the fact that middle school kids, their brains are a little different, they're going through all kinds of funky weirdness there. that they need kind of a multi-sensory approach if at all possible. And I think they need commercial breaks, honestly. We're in a pattern now where on Sunday mornings we teach and talk, teach, talk, teach, talk. And what I mean by that literally is like I will teach a lesson, and I would even ask my teachers to teach, but then stop within 10 minutes and talk about what you're talking about for a few minutes, and then teach, and then jump back in there. I think that just helps because their brains are just wired that way. And realistically, we know that the technological world that we live in with kids and the commercial breaks that they're dealing with, the interruptions that they're having, that they're just, for them to sit there for 25, 30 minutes and listen. Woo. Like, that's hard for a high school kid.
Yeah.
It's hard for me. Honestly, it's hard for you. Can you do it?
It
depends on who's speaking.
Depends on who's speaking.
But yeah, I mean, I just think I gotta give commercial breaks where you can, and make sure it's applicable.
Yeah. Well, we even do that with our college students, where, and it's maybe for a different reason. We find there that it's really hard to get any type of feedback because I think culturally we're more introverted now. We seem to be, at least, moving more and more that way, or seems to be more prevalent. And so if you ask a question for a response, there's no one, especially with a fairly large group, nobody's really going to respond. Yeah. So what we've done is tables and said, hey, as we're planning out the lesson, we've got them at tables and we're saying, hey, take a couple minutes. I want you to discuss these questions at your table.
Sure.
And then asking the table to share. Yeah. They don't mind ratting out what their friend said.
Yeah, totally.
But it's kind of the same thing, just chopping that up. It's been really effective for us, actually.
Yeah. And with middle school, what I would tell you there is you've got to work hard at making sure your questions are good.
Yeah. Now, do you have adults at every, do you do tables? Or
we do tables, yeah.
Do you have adults at every table?
I do.
And the adult is the one, is it master teacher? So you're kind of like teaching, and then you have adults.
It's not the only way I would do it. Even if I were in a traditional Sunday school setting, though, I would morph into something similar to this if I could.
Sure.
Where I would try to help teachers understand, okay, you've got them for the hour, but you can't just get up there and talk for 45 minutes.
Right. Yeah, you got to be able to discuss that. Okay.
Totally. Yeah.
I was just trying to figure out, because you're not leaving them to the wolves to discuss.
No, gosh, no.
You've got folks helping too.
No, and you got to also realize you can't ask a question and give them 15 minutes to answer a question that's going to take them about 2 minutes to answer.
Right, because they're going to find something else to do.
Yeah, 100%. And so, but even the way you craft the questions to where they demand actual answers, and even using little tools every once in a while where you maybe say, hey, everybody grab a piece of paper, write down the answer to this, so that, and then now talk about your answer around the table.
Yeah, why did you write that
down?
And
a parent, everybody can, or whoever's teaching in that moment can say, hey, what did you write down? What'd you write down? What'd you write down? So yeah. Just with that whole, under that topic though of teaching and Bible study, the application part is just huge that can come out in that, but even the way you're teaching, I think you have to remember that they don't think abstract. They think concrete. So therefore, you can't simply say, hey, you know what? You really should love your neighbor. Because when they hear that, they think, wait, you're talking about that creepy guy that lives next door because he's weird.
Right.
When you mean, hey, I'm talking about the person that has a locker beside you or that's in your English class. So you have to say, you need to love that person that has a locker beside you. So it's all about those moments of just making sure that you're really focusing on application that's clear. That part's just huge, I think.
Yeah.
And it's challenging to teach that. When I think, honestly, I think one of the biggest challenges, one of the reasons why we have such an aversion to middle school at times is that it's harder at times. Not all, because I don't act like, oh, I'm doing the hard stuff. No, I don't mean that. But I do think there are parts of it that are extra challenging.
Well, you have to be more intentional, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
You have to be way more intentional.
Yeah, no doubt. I spent a lot of time talking about that whole teaching Bible study thing. Be careful about not stepping on landmines of, because it's hard to get them back, obviously. Let them ask hard questions. I think all that stuff's huge.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Freedom for them to ask. They feel safe to ask those questions.
No doubt. Missions? Do you do middle school?
Yeah.
Missions?
So we have
middle school kids?
We take them to DC area.
Sweet. Yeah.
So we do separate. So our middle school and high school missions are the same week. So I will lead one, have volunteers lead the other, depending on where we're going in the year. And then our college does separate stuff as well. Those guys are going for like a month.
Yeah.
In the summer, and it overlaps. So
sure.
They kind of catch, our groups get to where they are. At least this is right now to this point. Although I think this is going to be changing in the coming year or so. Right now, our groups show up with where the college are the last week that the college students are there.
Gotcha.
So, and then they come back together. We all come back together, which is really cool.
Yeah.
It actually works really well for us.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that I would say across, when I talk to other youth pastors, I think that typically, again, I know you're going to expect me to say this, but I think typically middle school kids are underestimated. When it comes to what they can actually bring to a mission field. Table.
You want to know something that will surprise you?
No, talk to me.
Yes,
I do want to know something.
You just said no, but I'm going to talk to you anyway.
Yeah, good.
I was actually a middle school teen director for a while, long time, and ran middle school after school programs.
Sweet.
Working exclusively with middle school kids.
There you go. You're a middle school guy.
I don't hate them.
I didn't.
But I feel like you're judging me.
No, I don't think you do. I'm not judging you.
I love them.
I'll judge you later. Missions, what we're saying, I do think that people underestimate them.
Yeah.
I think they can handle way more. I just think you have to be careful about some things. I think you need to make sure your location is middle school friendly, that they can actually do what. But I will say this, I would probably put a middle school kid on top of a roof with a hammer before I would put a junior in high school. I know it's controversial to say that, not like in a major way controversial, but honestly, man, I just some juniors I know that they just don't care about what the rules are, But like with middle school kids, man, like I feel like it's one of those things where at least you can set some clear guidelines, you know. And most middle school kids I know, man, if you give them a clear task, they will work at it. You have to keep them on that task.
Right.
I'm not saying it's like super easy, but I'm saying though that here's the other thing, man. If you're out there actually doing mission work where you're sharing the gospel with somebody, like you can tell a kid, hey, will you go witness to that tree right there? And they'll go witness to the tree.
Yeah. So, okay.
I love that part.
We went, first year we were
They're not like, oh, I don't want to go talk
First year we were in D.C. Yeah. Okay. We did, we were working with the church plant there. And it's a suburb of D.C., but so we would go do prayer walking in the mornings through some of the neighborhoods and communities. And then in the afternoons, we would do some door-to-door and inviting to a block party. Okay. And then we had a big block party on the weekend on Saturday for the community there. And we did some other things, but those are some of the things we're doing. If you, at the end of the week, I'm asking the kids, hey, what do you think what was your favorite part? I'm thinking block party.
Yes.
All 100%. Okay.
Yeah, totally.
They said door-to-door.
Door-to-door.
They loved it.
Yeah.
In fact, when I found out later is they were actually, the leaders that were with them were struggling to keep up with them because they were racing
door-to-door.
Door-to-door.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to get to the next door. And it was awesome, man, because they were saying, like, we prayer walked to these neighborhoods in the morning. We felt like we already knew them when we got there in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Or in the evening. And here's try to do that with a high school student.
And Jody, if there's, so this would be like if there's a moment where I'm going to get up on like a little preaching post here it is. In that moment, we have to believe that God can actually use them the same way He can use a high school kid or an adult or you or me or a pastor. That God can literally, through the Holy Spirit, through a middle school, 7th grade goofy boy that you can't keep in his seat on Sunday mornings, standing in Washington, D.C. at an apartment door, that if God chooses in that moment to allow the Holy Spirit to work through that kid and help that person come to an understanding of what it means to trust Christ, that He can do that, and He does.
Yeah.
We take our kids to Dallas, Texas, 7th and 8th graders, and we do apartment ministry there. And we've been doing that for a little over 10 years now. And what I can tell you with certainty is that I've heard story after story after story of kids leading people to Christ. And it's not just like they just are doing this kind of cheesy, hey, do you want to believe in Jesus? You do? Okay, check 1. You want to believe in Jesus? You do? Check number 2. But they tell these stories of conversations they've had with people, and it's like, wow, the Holy Spirit was a part of that. That's unbelievable. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And we have to believe that. And I think if we start to believe that about middle school, kids, that's going to help us to tolerate, the crazy.
Yeah.
It helps.
No, I totally agree.
It helps.
And, even now, we still do that similar ministry model.
Yeah.
On those trips, and every year it's the same.
Yeah.
And I mean, we expected them to do it. We didn't just give them a task.
Totally.
We expected them to do it and do it well. In fact, the block party. So we take one of these kids years ago. We take this kid to the block party, and one of those medication situations we were talking about earlier. His parents decided going to give him a break this week because
isn't that great?
On mission trip.
Yeah, of course.
And so we give this guy the task of being in charge of the prizes. So he's going to wear the prizes of the block party. And so this kid had kind of just gone hard all week long and hit a wall about Thursday. Okay, so about Thursday he's just hit the wall. And so we get to the block party on Saturday night, and you're in charge of the his name's Chris, no offense. You're in charge of the prizes. So he's over there, he's got his little thing, kid's supposed to come. I look over and he's laying on the grass asleep. And the prizes are just strewn about, and the neighborhood kids are just going to town, man, on the prizes, right? They're just going. So I go over and I'm like, Chris, what are you doing, man? Like, you got to get up. You're in charge of the prizes. They're taking the prizes.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just really tired. I just wanted to rest for a minute.
Yep.
And so I get him up and say, okay, stay in the chair. Stay in the chair. You guard the prizes. This is a great task for you, right? And so about 10 minutes later, I walk back through and I look, and Chris is in the chair.
Yeah.
Asleep.
Again.
Holding the prizes now in his lap.
Yeah.
And like around him is like this posse of children that are like
waiting for the
trying to figure out how to get their prizes without waking him up. And it was awesome.
Love it. Gosh, man. I love middle school stories, man.
It was a good story. That was a great, I mean, that was years ago, and we still laugh about that.
Yeah, totally.
He also burned his hand pretty badly because they decided to do like a pig roast for us.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So they dug a big hole.
Yeah.
Built a fire.
Yeah.
Wrapped a pig in wet burlap, threw it in the hole on top of the fire, and then covered it up for a few days. Then they dug it up and pulled it out. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was like
this kid grabbed onto it before.
We said, don't go in the hole. Don't touch anything. Right? My wife walks away. 30 seconds later, I hear somebody screaming.
Yeah.
And he reached down to pick up a rock from inside the fire.
That had been like coal, basically.
Yeah. Immediately blisters.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, it's freaking out.
Well, you'd like to think they learned, but they didn't.
No, that was earlier. That was before the falling asleep at the thing.
Yeah, totally. Well, I love that. I actually, and that's one thing I would say, is try to embrace those stories.
Yeah.
The wacky, the crazy. I've got a ton, and they'll probably come out over the years as we're doing this podcast thing. But I actually look back on all those things with great fun. I mean, because here's the thing, dude. If I look back at me, good night. I did some ridiculous things. But yeah, man. But missions, man. Do it with middle school kids. Don't leave them out. I'm okay with growing in. I don't think they have to do everything. And I think we'll probably talk about this some as we go along as well. Every kid in our group doesn't know everything. As a matter of fact, you heard me say a minute ago, we take 7th and 8th grade to Dallas. We don't take our 6th graders to Dallas.
Yeah.
We let kids kind of grow into different things here at our church. But missions, man.
Do you do anything for your 6th grade?
Yeah, we've done a overnight thing. We're changing it this year. We're actually going to do like a 1-day type experience where we do some stuff here locally in Atlanta and work with a couple organizations just to do some local stuff. But yeah,
cool.
But because we do want to do something.
Yeah.
And it'll be good. It just won't be load up on a bus and go to Dallas.
That's a long way on a bus, man.
It's 14 hours. That's good. I love the bus ride. Once you get on the bus, man, you just chill. I love it. So, all right, let's jump into this before we run out of time, bro. Okay. Making middle school and high school separate.
This is the one I've been waiting for.
You've been waiting on this one?
Yeah, because I knew it was coming. Because we've talked about this before, and I just kind of let you speak.
Well, you can push back on me a little bit. Let me tell you what I'm saying and what I'm not saying. Because I do understand here. I'm at a church, let's be fair. I'm at a church where I can be a middle school pastor only, and not everybody listening is in that same situation. And some people listening are in a situation where they're just trying to keep their head above water. I understand that. Sure. I've lived that too. I'm not living it currently, although even within the context of middle school ministry, I got to tell you that I'm still trying to keep my head above water. It's just with middle school only now. Right?
Sure.
What I'm not saying is that every middle school group, every youth group needs to go in and just blow everything up and separate everything, because I know that that's not practical.
Right.
What I am saying is, where possible and when possible, have some things that are middle school focused and some things that are high school focused, and believe that it's worth it. When possible, try to have middle school and high school, Sunday school type, Bible study type moments separate, so that whoever's teaching can teach directly to middle school, and whoever's teaching high school can speak directly to high school. When possible, do some events, even the cheesy, trivial type, we're all going out to CC's Pizza after church on Sunday night moments. Have some things like that where middle school do one thing and high school do something different. Because it allows middle school kids and allows high school kids to be who they are.
Sure.
And that's one thing I love about having groups. And if all of a sudden I end up getting called to go to a church at some point, where the group size is different, and I've got 7th through 12th grade or 6th through 12th grade, I'm going to do my best to separate that group some, according to the context and where I'm serving. I'm going to try my best to split that group some.
So
the word split's a terrible word.
Yeah.
Because in church world split,
Launch.
So, yeah. Well, just divide out whatever you want to use there, but allowing middle school kids to act like middle school kids. Because often you get them in the same room, man. A middle school kid, they're trying to act up like, to what a high school kid might want, so they don't feel free just to run around and play and be goofy. High school kids are kind of like, oh, the middle school kids are in the room, whatever. And you might even lose some older high school kids as a result of them being in the room because they don't want to be around 7th graders or whatever. And I get that.
Yeah.
So when possible, have some moments. It doesn't have to be, and I think too often when I say make middle school and high school separate, people hear me say that like all or nothing, and that's not what I mean.
Sure.
What I do mean is when possible and in specific areas in the context of your youth ministry, try your best to make some things separate.
Yeah.
Just so that you can divide that puppy out a little bit.
I think some of that, I agree. I don't disagree. I think some of that also lends to the culture that you're in. Okay, so
100%.
Like, if you're in a smaller community,
yes,
which is more of a family type community, smaller church, it's maybe not as big of a deal for your middle school and high school to be together in the same room. Like, they don't feel weird to be that way. I still say there's advantages, and I agree with you that you need to find moments to let them be who they are. I think one of the things that we've always tried to build is a culture where our high school students recognize that there's value in the middle school.
Sure.
And vice versa.
Yeah.
Right. And that they're not just there because they have to be. Like, we want our high school students to model for our middle school students. I think everybody wants that, right? Model for our middle school students what that looks like. We want our middle school students to see our high school students and be around them so that they can see what is to be and have something to look up for too. So, I like to hear, I like what you're saying as far as like being intentional there and having moments where they can be each other. I think there's value also in having opportunities where they're not separate. I don't know what those are probably going to look differently in each culture, but like for us, like our small groups are all divided. We actually divide them out. We don't do master teacher; they're all in groups, and we try to divide them by grade.
Yeah, of course.
That works for us, but we've not always done it that way. But that's right now where we are. And in previous churches, that was even an option because maybe I only had 15 kids or less than that. It's pretty hard to do. A group of 2 is small. That's a very small group. And, I know where 2 or 3 are gathered.
Yeah.
Out of context is that thing. But that's not the goal. So I think there are moments where you need to treat them separately. I think for us, the mission trip is one of those.
Yeah.
We do our small groups. Obviously, are separate. We do some separate activities, but not all of our activities are separately. For us, camps all together.
Yeah.
But even in camp, like share groups, split. Right, obviously cabin assignments and everything, so room assignments were split.
Well, you say obvious, and I would say that it's not obvious to everybody. It wasn't to me early on.
No, but it should be.
It should be. And honestly, a little bit of this as being a parent, I've learned a little bit of this. I never really thought twice about putting a 7th grader and a 12th grader in the same room in a cabin at camp. But I would tell you now that there's no way that I'm doing that. As a parent, I can tell you that I feel like I owe it to parents to help, because the potential for exposure and all kinds of weirdness there is unbelievable.
Yeah.
But,
that's just not a conversation you want to have as a youth pastor when you get back, of why their kid is suddenly asking about all these things that
a high school kid's thinking about, or, that they're hearing. It's not a good situation at all. So I think it's super important that you, again, where possible. And I used to say, oh man, there's a huge difference between a 7th grader and a 12th grader. What I can tell you now is there's a huge difference between a 6th grader and an 8th grader.
Right.
Huge. So definitely where possible, for me, it's just, kind of have moments of separation, especially where and maybe a good way to think about that would be where there's potentially moments of influence.
Right.
But even if you think about just the way you teach on stage, like depending on your topic, the way you speak to a middle school kid is different than the way you speak to a high school kid. Even the abstract versus concrete thinking thing alone impacts that. But including topics, you want to talk about like what you're going to do with the rest of your life and making good decisions as you get close to going to college. Well, a 7th grader's like, what are you talking about? That's 5-6 years away from me.
Right.
When you talk about sexual type issues, or if you talk about pornography, you can't talk about pornography in a room with 7th graders. You're exposing them to that. And I'm not saying no 7th graders are struggling. I know that some are, but there are a bunch in your room that are not.
Right.
So that's where again, for you to have moments where possible. But then also just in the fun things. And one thing I'm huge on is having fun, man. Like youth group should be fun. Middle school should be fun. High school should be fun. But allowing those fun things to be separate, and also for them to build tradition. And maybe even making high schools seem a little bit better. That might be a real win for you. If like, oh man, high school, they get to go bowling. We don't get to go bowling. We have to stick around the church and play Foursquare or whatever. Yeah, but one day when you get in high school, you get to do that, though. That's going to be cool. So I think there's some potential there for huge.
Agreed.
So, yeah, man. But hey, listen, long story short, I love middle school students. If I can help you in any way, on this podcast, let me know. You can just reach out to me, man. And if there's anything very specific to middle school, if that's a way I could be a resource to anybody listening, and if you want to bounce some ideas off or talk through some things, I'd be happy to help with that,
Yeah.
It's huge. As we go forward, I'm sure it'll come out from time to time.
Yeah, you're the pro.
I don't know about that. But yeah, so I love hanging out with Still. It's crazy. So.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I would say, my fear is a lot of times on this, regardless of the topic, that you've got so many people listening in so many different environments and contexts, right? So it's really difficult. Yeah. So generally speaking, man, I've tried always to be very principle-oriented, which I think we've done today.
Yep.
So that regardless of your context, you can apply that. So what I don't hear is go and change everything you're doing abruptly.
Please don't go change everything abruptly.
Like if you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, I need to do more of this, don't walk in, next week and just say, hey, we're going to split middle school and high school. That is disastrous. That is not healthy. And
and you will have pushback from parents or kids, and you will have pushback from kids. You'll have 8th grade kids that they do not want to be separate from high school. And what are you doing? Why do you hate me so much? That's why you got to go slow with this process, man. You got to go slow and look for little things and build. And this is just to be real clear, very concrete on what I'm saying. When I say over time, I don't mean 3 months.
Yeah.
I mean a year or 2 even.
Right.
Work towards slowly working towards, and that means you're going to have to do some long range planning. And you're going to have to start create a culture. You're going to have to paint this vision out for your leaders and your people, and help them to understand what you're trying to accomplish, and then get them to buy into it so that you have the support of everybody.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
cool. All right. Well, if they have questions, Twitter's the easiest place, right?
Yeah, or just email me, whatever.
Okay, so it's
Chris at the Longer Haul.
Yeah, Chris at the Longer Haul or at Chris Trent on the Twitter sphere. Or always on the Facebook page.
Yeah,
that's fine too.
Yeah.
Resource?
Want to talk about games?
Yeah.
With middle school specifically.
Sure.
I'm just a huge fan of equalizer games.
Mm.
And we've just stumbled across some of them lately that I feel like are excellent. A couple quick ideas. Number 1, 9 square in the air.
Which is like 4 square, but 9 of them and above your head.
Yes. We played inside. It's a little pricey. You're going to have to save up for it. Maybe somebody listening right now has a connection to the people at 9 square in the air. Maybe we could give away.
That'd be awesome.
Wouldn't it be amazing? Like somebody get us a free 9 square in the air to give away. That'd be awesome.
That'd be great.
If you're in charge of 9 square in the air and you want some free publicity,
we'll toss one your way.
Not that I'm giving it already for free anyway, because it's awesome. Here's what I like about it, man. Long story short, the smallest, most unathletic kids in my group can play this.
That's me.
Yeah. Okay. And so it's an equalizer game. So even the strongest, lacrosse, basketball, football player, whatever guys, my daughter, who's in 8th grade, can beat them at this game, which I love. I love those equalizer type games. And the beautiful part is you've got 9 people playing at the same time. And then you've got, maybe a line of 6, 7, 8 people waiting, but it's a fast moving game. Another one, carpet ball. Tons of plans online. Surely you have a carpenter, builder type person. You need a wall in your room, your youth room, to put this thing in. What could be more fun than to hand a middle school kid a billiard ball and tell them to throw it? So if you don't know what carpet ball is, just look it up. It'd be hard to explain.
Well, we'll put a link to some. Yeah,
I mean, there's plans. We built our own. And put carpet. Again, a little bit of pricey there in terms. It's not that pricey. You just got to buy the wood, and then somebody would probably love. I would say build it sturdy though.
Yeah, billiard ball is a good ball.
But if you got like a builder or somebody in the church, he's probably got some wood laying around, or she's whatever. So that's huge. I tell you what, we just stumbled on. Last quick tip would be we just went up to camp. We call it Man Tree. And we took all the middle school guys up there, and they had this game called it's a broom ball, and it's not necessarily anything new. But the funniest thing was the Camp Highland is where we were at, and one of the guys on staff was tasked with ordering brooms for every cabin, and he found this great deal on 12 brooms, and so he ordered them. They were going to put these brooms in the cabins, and when they came in, all the brooms were like 3 feet tall. And that's why he got such a great deal on it. But so they had to come up with a game. So they just did broom ball, where you hand, 6 guys on one team, 6 guys or girls as well. Our guys and girls both play. And we actually put some color tape. So we'd like 6 of them are red, 6 of them are yellow, like on our sticks. So I kind of put this is $70, but I got like 12 brooms for like $70.
Yeah. So
like $5 a piece. And then a couple collapsible soccer goals, and then like a kind of like a dodgeball type ball, or even one of those like little cheap Walmart bin balls or whatever, and just throw the ball out there. And we do it inside, and we put we use tables to kind of create a like a wall. Yeah, kids are running around getting energy out. It's awesome. Yeah, and it was cheap. So about $100. I got 12 people playing at a time. Yeah. It's incredible. I mean, that's
a big thing. So everybody who listens who lives up north, they know.
Are they laughing at me right now?
Yeah, they know broom ball. Broom ball is like the thing.
Is that huge up there?
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, I'm such a rookie at this stuff.
If you listen.
I'm such a newbie, man.
Yeah, I feel
like a total newbie at times with this thing, man.
They're gonna hit you up so hard on Twitter. They're gonna make fun of you.
Make fun. But
no, my wife's family's all from Minnesota. They talk it's broom balls, that's it.
I thought they played hockey up there.
Well, you can't play hockey all the time.
I thought it was like icy and snowy up there all the time.
No.
Is that not true?
Up
north?
That's not true.
I think that's true. I think the only thing you know.
All right. Well, there you have it. Middle school. All you need to know about middle school.
Well, there's a ton more. But just look, man, love them.
Yeah.
Love them.
Cool.
Starts there.
Well, we'll make sure we put links to all this in the show notes page on there for you, so you can go and find about all these things.
Yay, fun.
All these game stuff. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to either one of us, really. But Chris is the man when it comes to middle school, so he's the guy that I would talk to on that. You can leave comments on the show notes page, or you can hit him up on Twitter, or you can email him, Chris at the Longer Haul, or over on the Facebook. Again, all of these links will be on the show notes page, which is at thelongerhaul.com/episode 051. Thelongerhaul.com/episode 051.
And on 5-2, man, we got to have a guest. Enough of me.
We'll have a guest.
We're going to have a guest.
We'll have a guest.
We're not going to tell you who it is yet.
It's a good one.
Yeah.
You should listen for sure.
Yes, no doubt.
So guest coming up on 5-2. Yeah. So until next time, we'll see you in the next episode, which will be a mystery guest.
Yeah.
Until then, because then we'll tell you who it is, because it'd be weird. Hard to have a guest if you don't tell me who it is.
No doubt.
Yeah. So go play games. Love and appreciate your middle schoolers. And until then, give them some Jesus.
Thanks for listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast at www.thelongerhaul.com.